40 miles an hour. Ugh. Everybody, welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. Today will be a really big day for the 36. We'll finally have it back together and in a condition well enough for it to run. We have over here our CSF Radiator. Now, this is just an OEM replacement one. CSF does do a lot of performance stuff. We just wanted to do a replacement one so it still has the composite end caps. We're thinking since oftentimes these radiators can last 15, 20 years, that we'll be okay just putting in an OEM one. And I guess worst case scenario later on, we'll probably go back to CSF, maybe Mishimoto, and get an upgraded radiator and then go from there. The other box that we have here is also from ECS Tuning. We ordered both of these from ECS. This one here has the upper intake boot. And the other thing that's in this box is the thermostat housing gasket. Again, just went with an OEM one. Looks like our housing is in good condition. So I'm gonna kind of go over these roughly and show how to replace them. They're actually pretty easy to do, especially on the 36, and especially since we have a lot of other parts removed from the car. That allows us much easier access to the car than normal. So we'll get all three of these items replaced and get the car back on the road. Now, I don't know if I'll be getting the car out today necessarily because it's been kind of cold outside and kind of raining off and on. And for a car like this, that's not the greatest thing to be outside in. In this video, we will be driving the car. I just don't know about specifically today. So we're gonna open the smaller box first. This should have the upper intake boot and the thermostat housing gasket in it. So there's the thermostat housing gasket and the upper intake boot. So the upper intake boot is pretty simple. Hose clamp here and a hose clamp here. This one grabs your mass airflow sensor and this one here grabs your throttle body. There's also a third one on the bottom. This one's just a friction fit. Well, you can see how fragile that was. I just barely pulled on it and it completely fell apart. So I'm just going to continue to work on getting the rest of this one out of here and then we'll get the new one in. All you have to do to prepare this to remove is to get rid of all the hosing and sensors. Then once everything's off the radiator, there's two tabs. There's one here and there's one on the other side. You release those and your radiator should be able to slide straight up. So we've got the radiator out, but I'm gonna get a little distracted here for a second. I wanna remove this AC compressor housing and the pulley. That's pretty difficult to do with everything in here. So I'm gonna do that real quick while the radiator is out, but I have it out. I am ready to do the thermostat housing gasket here in a little bit. So I'm gonna remove this and then we'll get back to the main project. So last of the AC remnants are now gone. So this whole section is nice and clear. Now we're gonna be moving up to the thermostat and the thermostat housing. Basically what I'll be doing is cleaning up this surface area here so that when we put on the new gasket, there's no dirt in between it. And then I'm also gonna be inspecting this thermostat. It doesn't look like I have any leaks around the thermostat, even though it's a little bit dirty down here. But if you see around the edge of this, it's a lot dirtier. So I'm thinking it was leaking here and then flowing this way. All right, so I have the radiator all plumbed up. It's the exact same process to put it in as it is taking it out. It's just in reverse. Took everything off of it, pulled it out. Same thing putting it in, put it in, plumb everything back up. Now what I haven't done yet is put this shroud back on. Now this shroud sits in the back, and this car originally had a clutch fan, and then this electric fan that sat in the front was for the AC condenser. What I had done was I took the original plug and I made my own switch on the inside. So I've got an up and down switch. It's an on, off, on, and the up is high and the down is low. So this right here has 3 wires on it. One is high and one is low, and then the other one is ground. The downside of this is it's sitting on the front, and that's not necessarily a huge downside. More than anything, this thing weighs a lot, and this is off of an E36, and we're thinking the module on this is broken. This has a Bosch system on it. These modules here oftentimes break. This is what controls the fan speed. So on my race car, the E46, this broke, and what I ended up doing was just wiring it directly right here. So as long as this motor here works, the fan will work. So we're gonna try and see what happens when I hook this fan up and if we can bring some life back into this one. This will sit on the back side of the radiator, and like I said, this doesn't weigh as much. And if we have any issues in the future, we'll keep this one around. So if we wanted to like run like 2 fans or something like that, I don't see us ever doing that. The E46s run 1 fan in the back. So that's what I'm gonna try to do on this car, is just run this 1 fan. So I'm gonna cut it right here just behind this controller, and then we'll go from there. So now we're gonna go run a test. If this runs, then we're in good condition. If this doesn't run, this is burnt up, this whole thing is basically just garbage. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up tonight. As you can see, it's not done. There's still quite a bit of work to do. So basically what was happening was the fan is a little bit thick in the back, and so what I did was I leaned the radiator forward and it wasn't enough, and I kept leaning it forward, and I ended up actually trimming this piece and letting the radiator come forward. I would show it a little bit more, but it's kind of late, and I was trying not to use power tools. So I've got a lot of really rough edges, and it looks like a real hack job, but I'm gonna clean it up real nice, make sure that we get some paint on there so that we don't have any issues with it rusting in the future. And basically what I did was I tilted the radiator forward about 15 degrees forward. That's not super uncommon. You'll see that a lot on really performance cars and race cars. Obviously we're not necessarily doing that to give us a lot of performance. I don't exactly know what the tilted radiator's benefits are to a race car, but obviously you don't want to do this to your car if you're just doing a radiator replace. They're pretty straightforward. Like I said earlier, take everything off, pull the radiator out, put it in, reattach everything. In this case, I had to modify it a little bit to get that fan to work. I'm going to wire it up so that we can use the same switch that's in the car. And in doing so, we have a fan that actually is more powerful than the one that was sitting on the front. I did test them side by side to see which one would push and pull more air. And this one weighs considerably less than another one. And it weighs even less after I took that module off of it and made it just a straight wire. So this one is an on and off fan. There's no high and low, anything like that. So that's kind of a downer that we don't have like a high and low switch, but that's okay. That's how my E46 runs. So at this point, we do have all 3 items installed that we needed. I'll be working on this a little bit more tomorrow. We'll get the system bled so that we're not having any issues with our coolant system, and then we'll be able to take this thing out for a quick drive. All right, so we are a few days later. I wanted to drive this car the next day after recording that last session, but it started raining and it got really cold, so I just put it off, and today it's nice and warm. And not to spoil anything, I did end up driving this mostly just around the neighborhood to make sure that the radiator and all that stuff wasn't leaking and that I had bled it out. I have not actually given it full throttle yet, so you'll get to see my actual reaction to everything, but I just wanted to make sure that everything was working right, and I did have to modify a couple things. The wiring that I used, the gauge was too small, so it was getting really hot for this fan, so I had to replace the wiring. Not a big deal. The other thing that I fixed after taking this around the neighborhood a little bit was the fact that it was still clunky in the back. The top hats to the struts were actually completely ruined. Those were really easy to replace and super cheap to do. So the clunking in the back of this car was a combination of that rod that had snapped for the convertible top that was sitting there clunking in the back, and the strut top hats in the back that were ruined. So now that everything's all ready to go, we're gonna cross our fingers, take it out, and actually put some power down and see how much faster this actually is than what it was before. It's been a while since I drove this like full on when we first got it here, so I'm trying to remember what it felt like, but I'm assuming this is going to be a lot faster since we're supposedly doing a little bit more horsepower and we've lost a significant amount of weight. It's so much different than driving just a normal convertible because there's nothing around you. You're just completely empty. Kind of reminds me of The Simpsons. And the no power steering isn't that bad as long as you're moving. I don't know how much the neighbors like the car. They don't seem very impressed. That's a heck of a lot faster than I thought it was going to be. We'll do another one. Well, this thing is far more intense than I thought it was going to be. That was brutal, brutal acceleration. Even compared to my 3 Series, I was not expecting that at all. The torque is just, it's almost instant. And the brakes are just as potent on the way back down. Your second gear. Okay, well, we're back in the neighborhood now. Not going to be doing anything too crazy. I do want to do a brake test to see how fast from 60 to 0 this is versus like what a stock one is rated at. I should have taken the car out and gotten a stock 60 to 0 back when I had all the weight still on the car, back when we first got it, but I wasn't thinking that far ahead. So I'll probably grab some numbers offline. You know, this is what the 328 used to do when it was stock, based on other people's testing, and then we will just compare it to what it's doing now. Well, there you go, the first real test drive and brake test. The Radiator series, very cool. In fact, while you're moving, if you're just driving like steady, you can actually leave the fan off. Now I know it's not super hot outside, but it was staying very cool. Very happy about all this. And like I said, I do want to do a brake test where we're doing a 60 to 0. And I'd like to do a brake comparison maybe between the E36 and this car. Maybe like a 0 to 60 and then back to 0, or maybe just 60 to 0 or 80 to 0, whatever we decide we want to do. But I'd love to do a brake comparison between the two cars. This has smaller brakes, but it doesn't weigh as much. That has much larger brakes, but it has more weight. So I think it'd be very close, very competitive between these two cars. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's content, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Thank you to all my Patreons. It's been helping out a lot. My Patreon link is in the description below. Till next time, everybody, we'll see you in the next video.